The Japanese shogunate in 1836 was a nation opening its eyes to a world it didn't recognize. While it was still firmly isolated from that world, its shogun, Inari Tokugawa, took it upon himself to begin taking some note of it. This was because of the limited interactions he had with Dutch merchants in Nagasaki. As he began to learn about the world beyond Japan, even with his rather limited scope of information, he saw that industrialization propelled much of the West to heights of power that were unimaginable to his cohorts in the East. This made him uneasy, but regardless, his people lived in secure isolation, the continuance of a centuries-long tradition, and he had no choice but to continue the governance of his land. Namely, the pressing matter of famine was at hand, and forced him to apply some of these new innovations from abroad. First, he commissioned his learned men to investigate strategies of intensive agriculture, and subsequently influenced the landed gentry to adopt them. By December, however, in the face of stubborn daimyos, Shogun Inari decided to take matters into his own hands, levying consumption taxes against all luxury goods, while using this new revenue to construct workshops and shipyards across the whole of the shogunate. This angered some radical groups, leading to him enacting a dedicated police force in order to control them and their deleterious actions against society. By 1839, the shogun pivoted towards a professional army, his anxieties about the advancing outside world still weighing heavy on his mind. This professional army included a mandatory draft, and while this upset the samurai class, it was ultimately a necessary move in the eyes of the shogun. In 1843, having been so inwardly focused, Russia colonized the uninhabited northern regions of Hokkaido, which damaged the reputation of the shogunate and forced it to act. The shogunate demanded Russia withdraw under the threat of war. Russia, however, didn't even respond to these demands. As a result, war broke out on the 10th of June, 1843. A naval invasion of Hokkaido was conducted under the auspices of Admiral Nairiki Tokugawa, which was ultimately successful. The unsuspecting Russians were cocky in their estimation of Japanese forces, resulting in an easy victory. Further bolstered by this victory, another naval invasion was set for Russian Sakhalin, under Admiral Hidetetsu Igawa. But this was ill-advised, as Russian Sakhalin had been settled much earlier, resulting in a stronger target and ultimately a devastating defeat. This got Igawa promptly ejected from his seat, leading to a second invasion headed by Nairiki Tokugawa, provisioned with 215 divisions. Not only did he manage to breach the Sakhalin defenses, but he advanced all the way up the island, depriving the Russians of all their holdings in the Sea of Japan by March of 1844. Also, while they were there, the armies of the shogunate conquered the uncivilized Ainu people of the island as well, occupying their lands. Russian sentiment back home began to turn against the war at this point, while Japanese sentiment remained high. Though this came with a heavy financial burden for the shogunate. By March, the cumulative costs of the First Russo-Japanese War had reached a staggering £9,000 a month. Luckily, Khiva in Central Asia invaded Russia as well, resulting in Russia capitulating to Japanese demands, and resulting in Japan securing all of Hokkaido while returning Sakhalin to Russia. This victory made Shogun Inari wildly popular, but nonetheless he had to now clean up this economic mess that the endeavor left behind. In 1845, gold was discovered in the area of Hokkaido the shogunate had just conquered from Russia, leading to a gold rush. In 1846, in order to stabilize the chaotic state of newly integrated Hokkaido, a National Guard was established under the direct supervision of the shogunate. In July of that year, the national reconstruction efforts proved too expensive, even with the gold rush, resulting in taxes being raised even higher, straining the entire Japanese people beneath its yoke. In an attempt to win the favor of a wealthy social class, that is, the clergy, the shogun declared Buddhism the state religion. In the meantime, the economy continued to run a deficit, and considering how well the last war went, Shogun Inari decided to further expand Japanese tea plantations by way of conquering the Dutch East Indies. Russia had been thoroughly embarrassed in its recent war, so this time, the world heeded Japanese aggression. Tragedy struck when the Qing declared war on Japan in support of the Dutch East Indies. an empire with quintuple the forces of the shogunate. The naval invasion of South Sumatra commenced soon thereafter, in an attempt to end the war swiftly, though this too ended in disaster when the Dutch Admiral Simon van Boetzaler rebuffed the Japanese fleet and killed Admiral Nairiki Tokugawa. By October of 1850, Japanese ships began to fight Qing forces in the Sea of Japan, turning them back, protecting the home islands at all costs. By the end of the month, Prussia threatened war against the shogunate with the simple goal of reminding it of its place. Soon, Prussia and Great Britain also declared war upon overzealous Japan. In May of 1852, the British Admiral Edward Codrington launched a naval invasion of Hokkaido, resulting in a humiliating defeat for Japan. As a result, Japan was forced to capitulate and abandon the war. Shogun Inari promptly committed seppuku for his great shame, and Japan once again turned inward under the leadership of Shogun Hiroto. Unfortunately, Admiral Codrington did not leave, and instead forced Japan to open its markets to the wider world. Japan, from this point on, would never be the same, and would indeed yearn for its days of splendid isolation. Hello everybody. So, Victoria 3 is a game I've been waiting for a long time. Victoria 2 was my first ever Paradox game, which I discovered back in 2014, and even then Vicky 2 was showing its age, so I embarked upon over 8 years of waiting. Now it's finally here and I couldn't resist giving it a test run. What you saw here was my first few hours of the game, learning the mechanics and getting used to the new feel that Paradox has put forward with this title. Victoria 3 is an interesting successor to Victoria 2, and is indeed so different that I feel a direct comparison is a little difficult to make. My favorite aspects of the game are the newly introduced interest system, which allows for further diplomatic interaction based on regional strategy, and replaces the old distance-based influence system. I also quite enjoy the detailed nature of taxation and how interest groups impact policy. However, combat is completely alien now. The player no longer directly controls combat, and I'm not sure if I love it or hate it. Regardless, I was able to make sense of it and defeat Russia as Japan in 1844, using the excellent economic system to my advantage. By way of constructing tea and tobacco plantations, then taxing the consumption of those goods, I was able to fund a standing army and police force, allowing me to make my diplomatic play against Russia while suppressing radicals at home. Overall, I had fun. Though in classic Paradox fashion, it's going to take some time for this game to reach its full potential, but it is still quite good in its current form regardless. I'd say in 1 or 2 years, Vicky 3 will blossom from a good game into a masterpiece, much in the fashion of CK2 or EU4. Also, I'm glad you guys liked the extra content I decided to put up after the Season 3 finale. I have so many more ideas for new anthems, but I think it's about time we embark upon Season 4, which you can expect sometime next week. Let me know in the Discord what anthems or other extra content you guys want to see, and I'll take it into account for the next time I decide to make some. Once again, thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoy what comes next for the channel.